I feel weird going before Bishop Palmer.
Well, you shouldn't feel weird. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of Hot Thoughts. Super excited to be here. This is a fun group that we have here. We're going to be talking about innovation. We're going to be talking about planting. We're going to be talking about creativity. And what makes us even more fun, more than trying some spicy wings and spicy conversation, is we have an entire crew from West Ohio. This is maybe the first time we've had a whole crew from one place, and we're going to add our last guest in, Pastor Peter. He's going to be joining us in here. So we got our whole crew here. And so with that, got our whole crew here. Actually, I was going to wait longer. But why don't we go into introductions, let everyone get a chance to meet you. And then for all of my guests, if you want to, you can, while your other friends are introducing themselves, you can take a moment, share this on your own page, make sure you make it public, and that way your people, your constituents, your church can comment, be a part of the conversation, all that kind of stuff. But Andrea, why wouldn't you introduce yourself, and then we'll go through this, and Pastor Peter, you'll end us with introductions. And so, Andrea, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, hi, everybody. I am Andrea Curry. I am the pastor at Trinity United Methodist Church in Bowling Green. I've been there this is my third year, going into my third year at Trinity. And what else do you want to know? Anything else?
Well, maybe tell us some interesting fact about you. I don't know. Share something else. Yeah.
So I'm married. I have a husband. His name is Will. We have a dog and a cat. Interesting.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, there's super interesting facts about me. I lead a really interesting life. I don't eat hot sauce, and so I'm really excited for this. I've brought a glass of milk for tonight to clean out my mouth. And we at Trinity, we're doing Fresh Expressions ministry, and we're really excited to be sharing the love of God in this college town, and just excited to be here tonight. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for keying that term, Fresh Expressions, because we have a lot of non-Methodists that watch this, and so they'll get a chance to find out what that is tonight. But before we get into that, Todd, would you let us know who you are, kind of what you're doing, where you're at, and who you are?
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Todd Anderson. I'm the superintendent in the Ohio River Valley District. And the Ohio River Valley District is the Cincinnati metro area and the southern suburbs of Dayton. We also have some rural areas as well as suburban. And we have 3 urban areas in our district too. So we have 118 churches and about 150 clergy that are connected to our district. So we're deeply engaged in launching Fresh Expressions and new faith communities in our district. And over the last 4 years, I think we've started almost a dozen in various locations. So we're very excited about that work, and we're reaching people for Jesus.
That's great. Alyssa, you're the newest to me, and so, but maybe not the newest to our audience. And so, introduce yourself. Let us know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Alyssa Graves. I'm a pastor in the Columbus area. My husband and I started a church called Central City Church in 2017. So we're on the west side of Columbus in a community called Grandview Heights, and then we also have ministry in the neighborhood of Franklinton. And so we run a free store called Little Bottoms Free Store, serving families that have kids 3 years old and younger. It's where I was like 5 minutes before I jumped on here. So we also have a 4-year-old son, and we launched our church on his first birthday. So we've already ruined his life. We'll be paying for counseling for how many years? But Brad's got our new shirt. We just had our 3-year anniversary this last day, and we got new shirts. That's us.
That's cool. Well, so your title says Gregory V. Palmer, but not a lot of people outside of the Methodist Church maybe know what a bishop is. And so, Bishop Palmer, would you introduce yourself? Let them know who you are, what you do, and what all that means.
Thanks very much. It's great to be with you, Danny, and with all of you friends from West Ohio. Some of you, I may say, it's just been so long since I've seen you, since I've been on Zoom and Teams with several of you today. I'm Gregory V. Palmer. I get the privilege of being the resident bishop of the West Ohio Conference of the United Methodist Church. I've been there 8 years and now turned the corner into year 9. And I get to work with lots of creative and entrepreneurial people. When you say a lot of people don't know what a bishop does, I've been working at that for 20 years. So I'm going to try to get it right. But in all truth, it's a ministry of oversight and encouragement, and it's always changing because stuff is always changing. And so we're in the middle of the pandemic now. I was in a role like this when 911 came and the world changed, and I thought nothing could be more dramatic. I was in this role like, when the the last big economic downturn before this one. And so the responsibilities of adapting and encouraging people's adaptation are ever present. And they're really encouraging. They can be draining energy-wise, but they're really, you see the very best in people. And you actually have some of the best of West Ohio tonight. So they represent dozens and dozens and dozens of other great people. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. David, why don't you tell us who you are a little bit?
Yeah, my name's Dave Warner. I'm kind of angry at you, Danny, for putting me right after Bishop. That is not fair at all. But we'll try to do our best here.
I also told you to make a funny bio, and so I set you up from failure from the beginning.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I'm from Newark, Ohio. We just planted a church in downtown Newark. We are about as far east in Ohio as you can be and still be in West Ohio. So if you look at Columbus and point your finger to the east, you'll find us in Newark. We launched Little Arrows Play Cafe, which is our outlet ministry to outreach in the community. We launched that first in 2017, and then 2018 we launched Engage Newark, the church, based on the relationships we established through the cafe. So we're just trying to do some ministry and meet some needs in our community.
Awesome. Brad, I know you and we have the Missouri connection, but for those that don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself to those watching tonight?
All right, I thought I was going last.
Well, I switched you, so now Peter's going last.
All right, well, good to be with you, Danny. This is an awesome platform, awesome show. I'm also thankful for all of these West Ohio leaders. We have so many innovative leaders in our conference. It was hard, I know, for you to let us have, 6 or so? 7?
7, yeah.
So we're grateful for that and grateful for featuring us. Bishop Palmer is the chief church planter and innovator for West Ohio. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing this. And so, but yes, I am from Missouri, born and raised in the Boot Hill up until almost 5 years ago. Then God called me to be a Buckeye and to put the I can't say put the St. Louis Cardinals behind me because I still love the Cardinals.
I can't do that.
But so we've been here for 5 years and we love it. We definitely, have a lot of friends, mentors in Missouri annual conference, and I'm very grateful for my time there. And it was a great run. We had a business there for 14 years, my wife and I, and sold that to go into ministry. And here we are talking to you on a Thursday night. At most of our bedtime, it's Eastern time zone here.
Wow. Yeah, I got 2 young kids, so this is our bedtime as well. So, all right, well, that's great. Thank you, Brad. Pastor Peter, would you wrap us up in just kind of introductions, and then we'll dive into the flow of the show after that?
Sure. I just want to, it's not my bedtime, but nothing short of Jesus, Bishop, and Brad will cause me to miss a Lakers game. So the Lakers are playing now. So that is major. Brad is smiling because he knows that's
I appreciate
similar to
that.
an act of God. My name is Peter Matthews. I am the pastor of McKinley United Methodist Church, and was given the distinct honor and privilege to live into a vision Bishop casted called the Global Village. The Global Village is a space and place that operates in 4 historic African American churches, whereby we are renewing congregations and communities, recruiting new generations of persons interested in pastoring and serving in the urban core, and then starting a series of reconciling relationships with some of our majority Anglo congregations. And so a lot of that doesn't initially sound like church planning, but we're really starting over in historic spaces. And so it's an exciting job. It's a busy space and place, but it's a lot of fun at the same time. So I'm thankful to be here.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. I will say I now apparently have a little against you because your Lakers knocked my Blazers out of the playoffs. But other than that, I think we're off to a great start. And so we'll move on from there. So the kind of the flow of the show as we go through this is what we do is we have 5 sauces, 5 questions, and we'll kind of go progressively through there. And a lot of us actually have the same first sauce if it got there in time. We'll see how the United States Parcel Service does. But we have the thought sauce. Yeah, it looks like we got that. And so we got that there. If you got that, show that. If not, maybe Alyssa, you have a different one. So what do you have to start off?
I just have mild from Roosters.
I love that. And so here's what we'll do is we will put our sauce on our wing right now. And if you guys all take a bite, I will start asking our first question. And Andrea, we'll start with you. And Peter, we'll wrap up with you. And so Brad, you got bumped 1 earlier. And so you'll be second to last. And so why don't you put this on there? And this is actually our own sauce. We made this as a show. And so I would love to know your thoughts on it as you answer it. But to start off, for all of our folks, you'll see the question on the screen. Do you think innovation is an important value of the Christian church? And so, Andrea, as you're trying the thought sauce, let us know what you think about the sauce. And then where do you see the value of innovation in the church?
Well,
You said this was a starter sauce, man. Come on.
I know isn't that supposed to be like the most mild one?
This might be my own fault. It's the most mild I have. So you guys might be having my problem. I'm sorry.
I mean, I've got like Tabasco over here.
Alyssa, you're lucky. You won out over there.
Mine's great. Yeah.
It's good.
Now, Bishop, I wasn't lying. He told me that it was mild.
It's good. It's got a kick to it right here.
Good flavor, though.
It gets you on the back of the tongue.
Yeah.
Back of the tongue.
I'm putting some more on.
Danny, if your project was to get us to pull an all-nighter because we couldn't sleep from burning, you're going to be successful.
I want to let you know that already, not even 30 seconds into questions, this is my favorite episode I've ever had. This is outstanding.
Are you preaching Sunday, Bishop?
Comes along with the hot sauce.
Yeah, I'll be breathing fire Sunday. Yeah, right.
I'm telling you what, it's going to be a hellfire sermon on Sunday.
Well,
We know Matthews will be preaching that.
Oh, praise you, Jesus, right now.
So Andrea, as you process the sauce and you think about the importance of innovation, what do you think about that? Do you see it as an importance?
yes. Very important.
Bishop's eating Prilosec right now, aren't you?
Well, I will tell you that I didn't anticipate this sauce hitting you guys that hard. So we might make this a communal question. Why doesn't it?
We're from Ohio.
Yeah, we're from Ohio.
Hot sauce here.
Let's move on to the next question.
Tex-Mex and stuff out there. Like,
All right, we're ready.
I might have to have, I think I'm going to stop inviting guests and just have this group on every week. We're just going to like Brady Bunch this we got like all of our squares. This is outstanding. Well, any of you throw it out there, kind of, what do you think about innovation? I think I would say this, I've been in a few churches. sometimes innovation is seen as the ultimate evil. And so I would not hold that innovation is important, but I want to see you guys kind of argue, why do you think innovation is an important value of the Christian church? And so kind of Bishop, why don't you drive in for us?
I'd be happy to. Let me offer a resounding yes from my perspective, that it's an important value for the church. And I go there in part because if I say something with some hyperbole, no innovation, no church. No innovation, no missional outreach. And the other way to say that for me is, it is characteristic of who the church has been from the beginning of its history. Yeah. So, I mean, if you go to the book of Acts, the whole thing with deacons, I mean, all of that is innovation. And you can go in every season of the church's life, and where it has resisted the need to adapt, it has literally died. And the only thing we have to hold on to as unchangeable is what the writer of Hebrews said: Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Yeah. And so it's who we are. It's our identity. It's in our DNA.
Yeah, I love that. Alyssa, what do you think?
Yeah, the thing that keeps going around in my mind is in scripture where it says God is doing a new thing, or behold, I am making all things new. And just as the church, if we want to be where God is, and if we want to be on mission with God in the world, I think we have to be always looking for what is happening and what those new things are that God is putting in front of us. I think I don't like change, like, at all. I don't like, yeah. I need my structure and my routine, and I need to know what I'm anticipating happening. But we can just get so stuck in that we forget about being the church and being where God is. So,
yeah. Peter, I mean, I feel like what you kind of named was innovation. And so, I mean, I would assume you would think that is right, but what would you say about this question?
Yeah, I think thinking about the notion of Pentecost was an event, kind of doubling up on what Bishop said, but then there became a series of encounters where people were trying to almost institutionalize the works of Jesus without Jesus being present physically. Mm-hmm. And so we've had to be innovative because we've had to continue to proclaim this message in different spaces and places without he who was present with the word, being incarnate. So I think it's always a challenge for us to think about innovation because we come from so many variety of contexts. And so it's trusting. And I think the wonderful thing about the Holy Spirit is to see how God shows up differently in different spaces, proclaiming the same message. So I think it's pretty powerful and wonderful to see all at the same time.
Yeah, that's so good. Andrea, I feel like the heat may have weighed off. It's gone now, so maybe you want to jump back in for us?
Yeah, definitely. I really liked what Alyssa said about God is a God who is making all things new. I really feel like innovation is, in essence, such a root characteristic of who God is, that it is a pillar of the church, like Bishop Palmer said. And so I really believe that it's who we are as the church. And so one thing that I often say to my congregation is that if we are not growing, we are dying. And so if we are not innovating, we are dying. If we're not thinking forward, if we're not moving to the next thing, if we're not stepping out in faith, then, friends, unfortunately, we are dying. And that may be like a hard, harsh, come to Jesus kind of thing to say, but I think sometimes our churches need to hear it.
Well, yeah, that's so good. I think it sounds harsh, but I think is great. And Dave, will transition to you because I got a comment that said Warner is beast. And so I feel like we should go to you. And so why don't you?
Really not the beast we're afraid of.
Yeah, I hope not. I really hope not.
I got no mark for you. I got no mark. Yeah. First of all, I like the sauce. It's good. I think most of you guys are pansies. because it wasn't that bad. But I accidentally got some on my lip, and so it's gone numb right here. So if I start drooling, it's because of that. It's definitely an important value. I'd go beyond value and say it's a necessity. Innovation's a necessity, and one thing we talk about here in West Ohio quite a bit is this whole idea of new wineskins. We're not teaching anything new, but we're presenting it in a new way that is accessible to people. It might be more open to people, but we're just trying to make it so people it's attainable and reachable.
Yeah, that's good. So why don't we wrap up with Todd, and then Brad, why don't you bring us home? And so Todd, you have any thoughts on this one?
Absolutely. So cultures change dramatically. We're in a time that we've never been in before. I mean, every aspect that we're dealing with right now, we're almost making a brand new decision every day about how it is that we're going to lead people, how we're going to share the gospel, how we're going to be engaged in new community. And so I liken it to Todd Bolsinger's book, Canoeing the Mountains, where you had to either adapt or you were going to die on that journey with Lewis and Clark because they ran out of water. We've run out of all of the things that we remember from our tradition. So we're going to either need to figure out how to innovate or we're going to stop being who we are. And it's just time to do that. And it's lots of fun, but you have to free yourself up to innovate and to have faith in God.
Awesome. Brad, why don't you finish this up?
Well, I will say that Todd Anderson is joining us from one of the meccas of innovation. It's the home of Procter & Gamble, which is the number 83 most innovative company in the world. And we as a conference, we tap into those resources. I mean, we've been to P&G meeting with the CEO who happens to be United Methodist. And he gave us a clinic on disruptive innovation. Do y'all remember that you were there?
That was fabulous.
So we're kind of in the midst of a disruptive age right now, which forces like fresh expressions and movements like that have been on the margins, on the fringes, to rise to the occasion. And so I do think we're seeing the birth of several different new iterations of church. But also we'll say that, if we say that we were created in the image of God, the fifth word in the Bible, if you look at Genesis, in the beginning, God created. We are created by a creative God.
Right.
Somewhere along the spectrum of our discipleship, though, we stop growing and we stop changing and we turn inward. And that affects the organization as well. And so everybody's said it. I think Bishop Farr wrote a book called Renovate or Die. I think Bishop Palmer needs to write Innovate or Die.
Well, on that wise, may I add one other thing, Danny?
Yes, please.
I would say it is Wesleyan to adapt. And if you look at John Wesley et al. And Francis Asbury, the movement grew and it spread because of adaptation. And I would just take one simple one, the field preaching of John Wesley, which he referred to as that thing most vile. He hated it. He despised the concept of not being in a pulpit with a manuscript, etc. But for the sake of the salvation of people and the transformation of communities, he submitted to the thing most vile. That's the spirit we need in this age, and that is signal of the spirit of innovation and adaptation.
Yeah. No, Bishop, that is so good, and I think is actually a great transition to think about, this idea, right, of submitting to that which is most vile. I mean, we think about that. I mean, and that is like a quote that I've heard said so many times as a thing to live up to. But when we come face to face with that, like, I mean, we have a harder time negotiating and navigating that. And so our next question, I think, will I think dip into that a little bit. But before we do, and you guys chose your second sauce, and so it won't be anywhere near as bad as the first one. And so I will tell you, my second sauce is worse. It's a Ghost Reaper sauce. It's really hot, but we'll go real quick. Andrea, and we'll end with Peter. What do we got sauce-wise? And then we'll dive into question number 2.
Well, I just have plain old friendly Tabasco.
That's the way to go. Todd, what do you have?
Red hot sauce.
All right. Alyssa?
I've got medium from Roosters.
All right. Bishop?
I got several here. I've got Holy Cow.
Bishop, we're going to go with Jamaican jerk.
Go with jerk. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good enough.
Jamaican jerk. All right. Dave, what do you got?
Yeah, I went to the store today and got a bunch that I have no idea what's what. So I don't know if I'm going hotter or colder. But this is a Jamaican. It's called Fire Stick Pepper Sauce. So just I don't know if I'm going hotter or colder. I'll let you know.
I like your style, Dave.
That could escalate quickly. We're gonna go with Patter Fam Jamaican jerk sauce, one of West Ohio's clergy over in Ironton, Ohio, where he makes all of the sauces and rubs. Check him out.
All right, and then Peter, what do you got for us?
I went to I got Yellowbird. I got a series of Yellowbird sauces. This is jalapeno.
Yeah. So just a quick shout out. They don't pay me, but Yellowbird, hands down, the best sauces out there made. If you want great, flavorful hot sauces, Yellowbird knocks it out of the park. So good.
Okay, my wife bought all these sauces for me. Please don't tell her. Don't give her too much credit on the air. You just hyped her up. Appreciate that.
They're all right sauces. All right, so as we take a bite, Andrea, I don't think Tabasco will give you as much trouble, so we'll start with you.
Good with my Tabasco.
So, do you see moments like these? And I literally mean all the moments. I mean, this has been a hard time of pandemics, of racial justice, even as far as yesterday has been a really hard day. I mean, we've had a lot of really a ton of things happening. And so when you think about, like, as far as this season as one to innovate, do you see moments like these creating extra space for innovation? Yes or no?
I think so. I mean, of course, it has created opportunities for the church that I serve to have conversations that we would not have normally had.
Yeah.
We have had conversations around race that we would not have normally had. Had the murder of George Floyd not happened, I think we probably would have gone on continuing in, our white privilege, and we would have not stopped and noticed. And I think that part of the reason why we did stop and notice is because we were locked down. And so we were all sort of in this place where we were exposed to the television, and we needed to have a conversation to process it, and then to figure out, how can we as followers of Jesus Christ work together to fight the systemic racism that we're seeing in the world, that now we're finally seeing. And, how can we work to make sure that it doesn't continue here in our community? Because that's our sphere of influence. And of course, it's called us to innovate in, technological ways. My church, it has 2 traditional services on Sunday morning. So we are innovating with a live stream. We've done drive-in worship out in the parking lot. So that's definitely innovative for us. And because of that, we've gotten to be out in the neighborhood and meeting our neighbors. And we've got new people that are coming and worshiping with us because we're not inside our historic sanctuary.
Right.
But even before the pandemic, I mean, we were innovating as a Fresh Expressions church, being out in the community and doing Fresh Expressions of church and going to meet people where they were. But the people from the Fresh Expressions were never coming back to the church, that's how it's designed in a Fresh Expression. But now we're looking at ways to create Fresh Expressions that are online and, meeting people where they're at in this pandemic, especially as people who are in the vulnerable population, people who are immunosuppressed, are not able to come back and worship within the sanctuary, and how can we create community in that way? I think that definitely creating more and more spaces for us to think outside the box and to create new ways for people to connect with Christ.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. I mean, that's really great. I mean, I think the job of a local pastor or a church pastor is hard in that regard, right? Like to figure out how to evolve and innovate in moments of the way church goes. And Todd, you have a different seat. I mean, you're a district superintendent. Like, so what does it look like for you kind of navigating that in terms of that? And how do you see opportunities in your space specifically maybe to leverage for extra innovation maybe?
Well, of course, the two pandemics have allowed us to really think in new ways to reach people and to engage. Social justice, certainly on one hand, and racism, all of the conversations that we're having about how it is that we can engage and really actually admit that there is white privilege, because there are plenty of people who still don't believe it. And with C19, thinking seriously about how it is that we get to be community in a different way. Let me tell you the story. One of my pastors called up the other day and said, "Can I receive new members online?" And I said, of course. He said, "Well, we have two people from Australia that want to join our church. Somehow they found our worship service online and they want to join our church." I said, "Fine. Have they been baptized? Because I don't know how you're going to do that." But they did that. So we have places that are thinking of new ways of reaching people and to be engaged in mission and ministry. And it's very exciting.
That's awesome. Alyssa, I know your context the least, but maybe you share with us a little bit about kind of what you think in terms of that. Like, is this creating space for you at the 30,000 feet, but at the 300,000 feet, like, do you see it creating space for others as well?
Yeah, I'm going to start the opposite and just go big picture. When COVID first started back in March, and just within my spirit, I just felt like the church was made for times like this. The church was created for times when people are scared, when people need community the most, when widows and orphans need support from others. And so for me, that's just been the feedback loop that's been going on in my head, is like, we're made for this. So we can figure it out. Like, the Spirit will work through us and God will lead us in this, because this is why God created the church in the world, to be a safe place for people, whether, wherever they are, whether it's online or it's in the streets or it's in our buildings. We were made for times of adversity. For us, when I think of innovation, I can come up with a million ideas, but I'm not necessarily the one to like implement stuff, because I'm like thinking about doing a million things and I am on to the next one by the time, that one could have gotten started. But what's been really cool about our community is we give freedom to people in our community to come up with those ideas as well. And so with when COVID first happened and we heard that we were getting stimulus checks, there are a lot of our neighbors that aren't eligible to receive stimulus checks. They're immigrants, new Americans. And so we have someone in our community who works with new American students in a school district in Columbus. And he came to us and asked if we would be the fiscal agent, basically, for this new fund that they were going to put together, that people were going to donate their stimulus checks that they didn't need. and we were going to give the money to immigrants who lost their jobs quicker than some of the rest of us. We're already playing it, like living month to month. We're already struggling. And so we, in less than 2 months, raised $15,000. And we've been able to support so far 10 families with that. And people are still giving every week. It's crazy because last November, we didn't know what was going on, but we felt that God was calling us to do something around immigration in 2020. And so we put a budget line in our budget, just $1,500, that we were like, we don't know what God's calling us to do, but we feel like God wants us to do something around immigration. So when this came up, we were like, this is perfect. Like, we already have $1,500 right here. And God just like blew that out of the water with raising over 15,000. So it's times like those, like just being open and willing to see what God is already doing in the midst of us that we can be a part of. And I think times like these, people, their wheels are spinning. They're trying to figure it out too. And so just being a place where we're able, like we have the space for that. We have the energy and the passion to do that, to jump on what God is doing in everyone's lives. Whether that means leading something or starting something, or so that's just one of the things that I would.
That's great. And Bishop Palmer, you have to lead at the 30,000 foot level, and so how do you see this space as kind of creating an opportunity to innovate from your specific seat?
Well, I would certainly say ditto to what the colleagues have said thus far. I think nobody would have organized this or willed this, and I'm not into divine causality about this. However, it's here. It must be dealt with practically, theologically, spiritually, materially, and therefore it is legitimate to say, God, who are you asking us to be, and what are you asking us to do in this moment? So, I've got a couple of roles. One is technical adaptations, but mostly it's people in the system that help provide that. The second is encouragement. Crises is a great time to stir up the skunk works of the organization, so to speak. And we need to pour into innovation in the crisis, and in the spirit of don't let the thing go to waste. I mean, if you need that cliche to turn over in your head as a motivation. But the third thing that occurs to me, and this is the reflective question for me, is what feels new that we're being called to actually old?
Good. Yeah.
And so serving people in need. I mean, you can run up and down the corridors of the Bible from Deuteronomy to Matthew 25 to the book of Acts. Is the innovation may be discovering again for the first time who we were always called to be, and owning it and loving it and discovering the deepest fulfillment. The book of Acts is about how do you push out from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria to the othermost parts of the world and navigate what were crises for some people, who's in and who's out, the whole circumcision thing. So you have all these questions all along in the book of Acts. They're elsewhere. And Peter said, when he finally dealt with the matter at the Council of Jerusalem, it seemed good to me and to the Holy Spirit, he said. And I think when I hear the colleagues referring to praying, Alyssa said, praying, saying, Lord, what are you having us to do? I hope that's a reasonable paraphrase, Alyssa. It's Peter was saying, after much prayer, I'm sure, and crazy dreams, sheets coming down out of the heavens with all kinds of creatures. But, at the end of it, he said, it seemed good to me and to the Holy Spirit. So it wasn't solitary. It was decision-making and discernment in community with the people and with the triune God. So we may be discovering for the first time who we were always called to be. What's new is actually not that new, but it's new. It may be new to us. So,
yeah, that's good. I remember our season finale of our first season. We had got several bishops on, and they all, without exception, said the same thing you said. This idea of, they said it a little differently, but they said like reclaiming the ancient, like is kind of what we're doing. Like we're in this modern space, but we are reclaiming the ancient ways of Jesus, which is really, really cool to think about. And so, Dave, I mean, when you think about that, kind of in terms of what everyone else has said, and just in terms of creating space for innovation, what do you think, man?
Okay, I have a review to make about the Jamaican Fire Stick.
Yeah, please do.
It's good. It's just not properly named. It should be named Ticking Time Bomb, because like there's a delay. You're like, I poured more on because like, oh, this isn't bad at all. And then about 2 minutes later, bam, it caught up with me pretty hard. I'm going to give like what I think is maybe a hard truth. And Bishop, it might be similar to what you're saying, but I might say it in a maybe a negative way, because at first we felt like we were innovating. In terms of COVID-19, we were like, oh man, we're doing all this new stuff. But no, we were simply adapting. We weren't innovating new things. We were just adapting to an environment. And I think, yes, it opens up space for innovation, but I haven't seen much. It's not been that. I haven't seen any crazy new thing where I'm like, whoa, that's never happened before. It might feel like it because what's old is new again. I think by and large, though, we're still trying to get back to normal. I haven't seen too much innovation, which is sad to me. And there's only one thing this is the next question that we're doing in Newark that's maybe even halfway innovative. But I just think we're trying to adapt and or get back to normal. I think we've lost Danny for a minute.
So, I'll go ahead and take over.
Brad. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm back. I'm still here. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, Dave, I don't disagree with what you're saying at all, but it is also relative. I think many of the churches in West Ohio, 1,020 churches, I guess, online worship was very revolutionary for them. And so for many of them, they were forced way out of their comfort zone. They were forced to think in ways they never had. But in terms of the future church, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like you've all said. I think we're living in a moment that can't be controlled, and that's what's bugging a lot of us that like to control things. Change is in everyone's job description now going forward. We have to figure out how to adapt. And I think coronavirus forced us out of the box, and I'm suggesting that we should never have to be forced to get out of the box again. We need to live ready to adapt and ready to be open and nimble to what and where God may be calling us to.
Awesome.
My sauce was good and nice and sweet. How about you, Bishop? The Jamaican.
I found it nice. It was a nice salve or a balm after the first one.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. I did not mean to send you all over the edge.
First thing, over the edge. Bam.
Good. He likes your sauce.
Out the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, we still love you, man.
I appreciate that. Peter, what do you got for us to wrap us up on this question?
I just want to be consistent with Dave. This jalapeno has some kick to it. It's also a little meaty. I wish I had the wings I prefer. It's a little meaty. I like this one though.
All right.
Better. I think when I was thinking about the question that was posed to us, thank you so much for giving us a heads up on some of them.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about the adaptation of the leader. A guy I like to read a lot called, his name is Howard Thurman, talks about our growing edges. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've found out on this space that it's forced me to do things that I've written about. personally.
Mm-hmm.
It forced me to do things that I've preached about personally. So it's not just that I'm experiencing this rapid fire change to adapting environments, but for the sake of survival, I've had to adapt myself. So I had no intention of going to some of the powers that be and say that poor people are not getting COVID testing. But as a result of that, I'm now leading a citywide COVID testing in 20 different churches, and we tested 2,000 people. That was not by intent or design. That's placing me over the edge. And I'm finding that this is calling me out of myself to be a little bit more authentic than I had anticipated based on my own time schedule. And so I think that there are moments that we're experiencing now where not only the institution is beginning to adapt and become more innovative, but there's this thing called Facebook and Instagram that lets us see who our real friends are and whether they're evolving and adapting too, or whether they're kind of stuck in some spaces. So even the fact, I'm encouraged by your sweatshirt, when you said matter, minimum, and to find that courage based on your own personal theology is a reflection of who you are and how you, even around the edges or the periphery, are asking people to reinvent themselves in real time. So I think, and I could talk a little bit at the end about how there's some tangible things that we've done, but I've been called out of the closet on a couple of things myself and had to be the Peter Matthews I was preaching about.
Yeah. That's good. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that's good stuff, and I do appreciate you calling out the sweater. And for me, and this is not I do host this show, but I also like to give you the voice. But I will say I went back and forth with this, understanding that in the kind of light of a lot of what's been going on, and especially yesterday in terms of the Breonna Taylor case, like when there's a platform to speak towards injustice, you got to do it. And sometimes I think innovation is on the bleeding edge of social justice, and that's where we got to be in that. And as a straight white guy, you got to use your privilege that you have in the best way you can. And so I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate all of you.
What does it say, Danny?
Yeah, my shirt says matters is the minimum. And I do feel that we fight for Black Lives Mattering, but I mean, matters truly has to be the minimum. And so, and I've made a point to wear it every week that we do this show this season, just because it feels like an important statement to make every time I get a chance to do this. And so, thank you. And so, Pastor Peter, I appreciate you throwing that out there. And I'm actually, if it's okay with you guys, I might skip our third question just because you guys have kind of already answered it. It was kind of how are you innovating in your unique context? You threw that out there. And I would just say to our audience, if you would, maybe if you have questions for our guests, throw them in the comments. But I would maybe ask either Andrea or the Bishop or Brad, anyone really, but could you define what fresh expressions are to those that don't know what that is? While kind of comments and questions accumulate.
Todd and Andrew would be good at that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Andy. So a fresh expression is a form of church for the changing world. And it is basically a vehicle of church that goes out into the world and meets people where they are to introduce them or to meet them in a relationship with Jesus Christ. So, for instance, our fresh expressions at Trinity look like, well, before the pandemic, they looked like a Taco Tuesday Bible study at a local Mexican restaurant. They looked like a Bible study at a local public housing apartment complex. We have a campus ministry that's a fresh expression of church at the campus of Bowling Green State University. And we have fresh expressions of nursing home ministry that happen around Bowling Green. And so it's really just the church going out into the world to create church into the world with no expectation that these churches in the world would ever come back to the established church. Do you want to tag on that?
No, that is so good. Actually, I would love our 3 conference officials. So we have a DS, a bishop, and a conference director. So I would love you to affirm, because not every area necessarily does this, but how do you affirm something like that when maybe it doesn't feed the same sort of metrics the church has been asking for years? Like, how do you wholeheartedly get behind a fresh expression when maybe it doesn't feed the church the way it always has?
Well, for us, we've actually allowed it to change the way that we measure effectiveness in the local congregation. None of you know this yet, but in this year's closing end of the year report, you'll have an opportunity to put down an attendance figure for in-person worship, fresh expressions, and online worship. So we're already innovating. This is here to stay, and we're in the process of launching all kinds of new things. In our district, we've been very fortunate. And now, as soon as I say this, it's going to be a block on us. But 100% of the fresh expressions we've started have succeeded. Yeah. And they are reaching all kinds of new people. And we are launching out of healthy communities. And we're launching into places where we've not had a discernible United Methodist presence in a generation.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Bishop, maybe what would you say to that? I mean, you're the highest seat up there, so how do you kind of try to support those things when maybe they don't always populate the numbers in the way that we've tried to measure them?
Sure. I've been a huge encourager of fresh expressions, and there's a little narrative around, how we got that started, and that I'm just grateful and humbled that Brad picked that up and then kind of help build a fairly loose infrastructure, but a clear one to stir it up. The DSs responded, other people in district and conference staffs, and then people like Andrea, for example, began to affirm it. The first thing is it gives permission to do what we've always been asked to do, which is to go to the world.
Right.
And because we've become, I'm an institutionalist in many ways. I'm a bureaucrat. I used to be offended by that. I actually have a different take on it. Because the bureaucracy, so to speak, I don't mean that in the red tape sense, can my job is to protect innovation, so to encourage it and protect it. And so you do need institutions to do that so that people can't get picked off one by one. So if myself and people like Todd, who have a supervisory role, and somebody's yapping at, let's say, Andrea, well, why are you doing that, Pastor? And I've seen some of the correspondence. Then her DS, Scott, can say, no, this is exactly who the church is. This is exactly what we asked her to do. And how can we help you not to see this as a problem or to approach it as scarcity, like there's not enough love in Jesus for you? I mean, and so that's what I try to do at this point. These folks are creating the ideas in their context. I tried to set a table that made it possible. Brad was the primary emissary of that flowed through the districts. And then my job is to say, you're doing exactly Jesus' work. And here's the final thing on fresh expressions. It's one of the things that we've given energy to that also gives permission to say, this is not working, have an honorable burial for it, and then say, what's the next thing? because we try to create stuff and think they have to last till Jesus comes again. And instead of saying, no, this is not working, or it's run its cycle. So I may have said too much, but thank you.
No, that's good. And Brett, so you have the most interesting seat, kind of, because Todd shared his seat, the bishop shared his seat, but you created what the bishop called this loose but defined infrastructure. And so maybe just define a little bit how you went about that, because I know, I mean, this is just a seat I sit. I have friends across conferences across the country. Not everyone has that. And so what were maybe tips for people in your seat that created such an infrastructure is that? Like, how'd you go about that?
Well, it starts at the top, working across the connection with my counterparts. Not everyone has a bishop, or honestly, hats off to Bishop for appointing the cabinet that he has. We have an amazing cabinet. Todd being one of the 8 leaders, they just have really embraced the Fresh Expressions dinner church, probably house church next year. And so I'm just a strategic partner for our cabinet, and we work very well together. And I think everyone's focused on the mission of making new disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And so with Bishop's leadership and permission giving, really, like I said, we should never be forced to think outside the box again. I mean, if you can dream it now, you can call it a fresh expression and do it. As long as you're focusing on those unreached people and helping make disciples of Jesus. And it really is unique. Just like I said, we're not the only ones, but I know that we're very fortunate because it has Fresh Expressions isn't United Methodist. It's not a United Methodist initiative. It's a Wesleyan, really it's based on Wesleyan theology, Wesleyan approach, but we have really kind of reclaimed it because of the Wesleyan approach. And so it's really great for established churches, which in West Ohio, over 90% of our churches are between 100 and 200 years old. So we have an established culture. So it's a great vehicle for established churches to move off center and think outside of themselves and get creative. That being said, if you look at it at the 30,000 foot perspective, it's a great option for a conference to move off center, think outside of themselves, especially as we have a desire to become more multi-ethnic, more diverse in our churches. A lot of times it's hard for, we're 98% white as a conference. And so it's really hard for anybody else to really feel comfortable walking into all white church. Studies say that if a group isn't at 20%, an ethnic group or another race isn't at 20%, they'll never feel welcome. They'll just feel like guests. And so I try to look at that from a conference perspective. How can we maybe move that needle a little bit? So yeah, it's a great option. I encourage other conferences to seriously take a look at it, but it has to start at the top. Initiatives like Fresh Expressions, I know a lot of people, especially coming from the local church to a conference, there's a negative perspective towards a conference, but initiatives like that, I'm convinced they have to be a top-down launch. Otherwise, they won't gain traction or the momentum or the support, and you'll have an uphill battle. And so you can eventually decentralize that, but it will affect the momentum. But hats off to our cabinet and Bishop.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe for Alyssa, Dave, and Peter, I have one more question for you because you didn't answer this last one. But someone threw in the comments, can you talk about the role of contextualization in innovation? How do you see that going? And maybe Dave, we'll start with you. We'll go Peter, and then Alyssa will end with you.
The role of contextualization in innovation. Well, I mean, you got to know where you are and who you're serving. What's the point of doing something creative if it doesn't meet the need of your community? So you could have the best idea in the world, but if it doesn't work in your town, what's the point? So is that answering along the lines of that question? You gotta make your innovation fit the needs of your community. Or it's not worth shooting for, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're trying to do in this urban core is to find ways to make bivocational ministry as seamless as possible.
Mhm.
And in order to do that, we've got to find leaders who are finding some sense of comfort being able to do more than one thing at a time. Because while we're innovating, we've got to inspire people to be excited about infrastructure. So while we're bringing in new people, those persons might not necessarily have the resources, relationships, or income to continue this launch. So while we're being entrepreneurial, we've also got to get people excited about light bulbs, shingles on buildings, and figuring out ways where we harness this energy to kind of continue to push forward. I'm going to share a piece of a private conversation that I had with Brad that he just answered once before. He said, Peter, the Global Village is doing these things at 4 different locations. You're seeing sizable growth. He says, do you think you can sustain it? And my comeback or thought to him was, the city of Dayton, 33% of African Americans are at or below poverty. And in the city of Dayton, that's one of the only 10 cities where the average per capita of an Anglo person is lower than an African American. So just because we're successful does not mean that we're sustainable. So we're also having to change that narrative relative to what context looks like and feels like. And so we're thankful that the conference is making in our space and place what feels like not just an investment in church, but an investment in people to become more interested and open to the possibilities of church. And I think the context of how we're showing it is to introduce what I think is the genius of Methodism, which is social mobility. So we're now finding kids in our after school programs getting ready to bother Todd for scholarships to go to Wesley Camp, who will then go to become advisors in the Wesley Camp, who will then go to HBCU. So we have this discipleship pathway that's available in urban settings that would not have been available unless they made that investment. So I know I said a lot, but it's rediscovering that narrative in such a way that inspires people to do the thing that's right in front of them.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really good. Alyssa, do you want to wrap us up on just kind of your thoughts on this? I don't know what your thoughts are, but kind of wrap us up on that.
Yeah, for me, it's just remembering like who we are as a community. And so like why we're here, why we ask people all the time, like why they come to our church. Almost in like wait, why are you here? Are we doing anything? But just hearing from people that have been with us for a few years and what brought them to us and what kept them here. And like you said, like having that narrative about who we are and what we do. Sometimes when we do something new, I'm like, wait, why does that even catch on? Why is that something that we're investing in now? But then we remember, like, this is why people come to our church. They come to our church because we're not afraid of talking about hard things. We are engaged in mission. We're all about relationships, and we don't forget Jesus. Like, you can do all of those things and be a social group in the community, but we really keep Jesus at the core of all of those things. And that's why people are with us. And so I think that, that keeps us from the rabbit trails, I think, that we could go on. Like I said, like I have millions of ideas that I'm coming up with, but when we think about those things and who we are and why people are a part of our community, then it keeps us from following the next trend. And then I also feel like we're almost ahead of the curve on some of these things because it's what God is calling us to do next. So like we're already in the conversation about immigration, 6 months before we saw a need because this is why people are at our church and God leads us in that thing. We're already in the conversation around infant mortality and Black maternal and infant death because God put us in that place a few years ago, knowing that we're all about relationships and we're all about mission in our community with Jesus at the center. And so all of these things, once we know who we are and why we're here, then it kind of keeps us in our context and true to who God's calling us to be where we are. That's all I got.
And they got so much more going on that she doesn't even share. So mental health, anti-racist organization that they're leading in Grandview, but we don't have time to get to that probably.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what you're doing, Alyssa, is really great. And I saw Andrea yawn, and so I want to get her home as soon as we can.
Oh no! And so I muted myself.
I'm giving you a hard time. So,
I'm yawning right now.
So I will tell you, friends, that I've been doing this show for 2 seasons, and my wife gives me a hard time every time because when I get to the Q&A and when I go off my script, I forget to do sauces. And so if you look at your wings, you'll see you have 3 wings sitting there, and we're about to go to our last question. Yeah. And so what that means is that you need to jump to whatever your hottest sauce is. And you can guess, but friends, what I got is I've got the last dab. This is 2 million Scovilles. It's really hot, and I will be honest with you that I will likely mute myself due to the pain once you start talking. It doesn't get any better, but I've just learned to cope. I've learned to cope with it more. And so, Andrea, what do you have? Sriracha.
Sriracha.
I love sriracha.
I don't know. It's what they have.
It is pretty. It's decently hot. Todd, what do you got?
My hot sauce is.
Come on, Todd. Tell them.
All right, it's kick me in the ass and call me Sally sauce.
There you go.
I never thought I heard that come out of Todd Anderson.
Well, here's the deal, Todd. The bishop expects your resignation on his desk this week.
He's heard worse.
There you go. Alyssa, what do you have?
Well, so the one I'm going to eat is the hot from Roosters, which I have not ever had. But I also want to shout out to my husband because I only had 3 wings from Roosters, and I was like, I need 2 more, hurry. So he went in the kitchen and made 2 more sauces that are actually delicious.
Wow. Well, I feel bad that you didn't get a chance to try them.
I did try them though. I tested them. They're really good. But I'm gonna eat the hot now because I've never had this one.
Danny, you're gonna have to have us back for part 2. We didn't get through all the wings.
I think that's right. Bishop Palmer, what do you have? I'm gonna take a bite of my wing while you do this.
I'm gonna lean on Brad. Brad, which is the hottest one?
We're going with the Holy Ghost Revival.
Holy Ghost Revival. Hallelujah.
Is that Brad?
I gotta watch this. Everybody watch this, okay? This could be good.
Okay.
And then Dave, what do you have?
I've got a couple left here, and like I said, I have no clue which one's hotter, but I've got this peach Carolina Reaper, and I got a Hatch green chili hot.
Go with the Reaper.
Reaper.
Go with the Reaper.
Go with the Reaper. I've actually poured them both, so I'm gonna eat them both while we're talking here.
Double it up, Dave. Double it up.
All right.
And Peter, what do you got?
Andrea's got the milk out.
Danny, you said you got the yellow bird. Is it habanero or blue agave?
So blue agave is really tasty. The habanero is hotter.
Okay, what about the serrano? Which is hotter?
The habanero is hotter than the serrano.
All right.
Well,
all right. So why don't we all?
They've got the hottest with the Reaper. Now Bishop and I have the second though with the ghost pepper, I believe. So
yeah, the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost.
Yeah,
I had to get more water.
Brad is funny. Holy Ghost, Brad.
I'm getting older.
So while y'all take a bite, why don't we? We'll rapid fire through this, and Andrea, we'll start with you. But what would be your encouragement to folks trying to innovate during this season? Pastors, lay people. Andrea, what do you got for us?
I think, try. Like, give it a try. because
Andy, you set me up.
the worst thing that can do you just fail. And the thing that, and that's what we do, right? Because you just try a new thing. And one of my mentors told me that the worst thing, when you're asking people to help you do things, when you're trying new things in pastoral ministry, the worst thing somebody can say to you is no. And so what? Like, keep it moving. Go on to the next person. Just ask the next person, and sooner or later somebody will say yes, because you'll just get to the next person who'll say yes, and so just keep going, and like, just don't give up. If God's called you to it, God will get you through it. And so like, these are my little mantras. And I like that you called this "Grow Where You're Planted," because I really do have a sign in my bathroom that says "Bloom Where You're Planted."
Yeah.
I don't know what it says about me that I have it in my bathroom, but bloom where you're planted.
I'm not going to go into that, but that's up to you.
That's bathroom talk. But like, where God has placed you is the place, that God intends for you to grow, intends for you to lead. And so, do the thing that God has for you right there. Mantras with Andrea.
Yeah, Todd, what do you have on that?
Well, I'm trying to recover from my last. Holy cow! Anyway,
we have that one too. Holy cow!
Oh my God! So the encouragement that I would give is that you have to push through your fear. One of the best days of my life is when I stopped caring what other people thought about me and just did the mission. And it's made a huge difference. So just push through your fear. That's my encouragement.
That's a good one. That's a good one too.
Alyssa, what do you got?
Yeah, I have two. I'm trying to remember the second one. It's like way past my bedtime. But the first one is pray. Like, I think that, I always was like, oh, of course, one of the pastors are going to say pray. But really in this season, I wouldn't be doing half of the things that I'm doing. I'm only doing half of the things that I normally do because this is a crazy time. But I wouldn't be doing half of the things that I'm doing without actually buckling down in prayer for me and for others and what we're doing. And then the second thing, especially in this time, there's no rules, wheels off, just do, do whatever God is calling you to do, and try it out. And if it doesn't work, like Andrea said, go on to the next thing. And I just keep telling everyone right now, there's no rules, so we can try anything.
That's great. Bishop, what do you got?
As this crowd will know, I turn to the hymn tradition of the church more often than not. And I would say, be not dismayed, whate'er betide, God will take care of you. Go for it.
That's great. Dave, what do you have?
You guys weren't kidding about the Carolina Reapers. Man, it's still getting me. But I'm going to say my encouragement is be not afraid. But in the wise words from Acts chapter 5 and Gamaliel there, if it is of God, it'll stand.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And if it won't, at least you tried.
That's good. That's good.
Amen.
What do you got, Brad?
All right. Well, it's very uncomfortable for a lot of us. Innovation, trying new things, taking risks. But we are in an age where, like we've said earlier, we have permission to fail and fail boldly, fail quickly. It doesn't hurt either to do that.
And fail cheaply.
Quickly could be cheaply. But, it's like having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. You pursue personal growth. Comfort is a casualty of growth. So we've got to get outside of our comfort zone. And when we refuse to embrace the uncomfortable, we become unfaithful. So we've got to take risks right now because we have permission to fail.
It's good. And Peter, why don't you wrap us up?
Not that it's halftime and I'm trying to rush to the game, but I would be thinking about leaving it on the court. Just leave it all on the court.
There you go. There you
go. About kind of what I'm experiencing now is when we decided to not just pastor our church, but pastor the city, we got a $50,000 gift for someone to, not for programming, but to make sure the building would stand. So to all of the stuff that we were looking to do relative to fixing roofs and shingles came as a result of someone thinking that we're trying to reach out and save the world. And so now we're a church that was 39, now over 150. Now we're serving 4,000 or 5,000 people annually because we decided to leave it on the court. And so I tell that to anybody, change your narrative. We have no real proof that any mega church, no pun intended, moved the wheels of history. But you hear these people now are moving the lives of individuals inch by inch and making humanity human again. So leave it on the court and God will take care of the rest.
Good.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I appreciate each and every one of our guests tonight. It has been so much fun. We are going to wrap up now this episode, but I hope you'll join us back next week as we continue this. Lydia will be hosting next week as we talk about the role of women in the Bible and women in the ministry and how God has always strove for that. And I wish we could have all of you on that to talk as well, but you can't be on more than once. That's just the way it goes. And so, but friends, we will see you back here again next week. And thank you so much for joining us.